Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about City of Mist. City of Mist is 2017 tabletop role-playing game done by Amit Moshe. And it was Kickstarter for $104,000. I did a review on City of Mist, and I gave my opinions on it. I'll give you a summary of that right now. I think this is a beautiful world with not a great rule set. Its rule set is PBTA, Powered by the Apocalypse Plus, more complexity and more abstraction and more length. So I think that was kind of problematic. I read through this book and then I gave my review for it, and I really was kind of like, I really don't like these rules. I'm going to kind of walk away from this book. I'm done with it now. I've read it. It's a nice read. I've learned the design lessons I wanted to learn, and I'm going to move on. But the reality is, I find myself drawn back to the book, right? So I'm blessed. I have a lot of tabletop role-playing games in my collection, and I have some new ones that are queued up. Like I have Modiphius's Legacy, Modiphius's recent Legacy tabletop role-playing game. Also, I just picked up Open Quest. I wanted to do a more deep read on Spire, right? So there's a lot of games that should be in front. I'm finished with reading this. I should be able to just move on, but I really find myself drawn back into that City of Mist book. I think it's really, really fascinating read. It really is. The world is incredibly compelling, and that's what I wanted to talk about today. I want to talk about the City of Mist's world, because I think it's really, really unique. All right, so the player characters in City of Mist are rifts, right? Now get this. They had, in the starter game, they called the player characters gatekeepers. Which, like, now that word has terrible, terrible connotations. You can never use it for a player character, right? So, because of gatekeeping and all the negative connotations that has for, like, specifically for the video game industry. But I thought that was kind of funny. So, Rifts is a much, much better name for what your player characters are. So, Rifts are rifts in the mist, okay? So, what is the City of Mist? So, the City of Mist is this city, right? And it has two layers, right? It has Logos, which is reality, and it has Mythos, which is myth, right? So your player character is essentially awakening. The best, the game shrouds this in a whole bunch of lot more fancy words, but essentially the best way to think of your character is that you are a half god, right? You're not a child of a human and a god, right? You are really you're made half of god material, or like you're almost like a god is emerging through you as a human being, right? It's really amorphous, right? And it's purposely amorphous in the game. Like I think they want to allow there to be a lot of interpretation for different players on how their character is this half-god creature, right? But you get this mythos, and so you could be the son of fire, right? And so your character could be the son of Surtur, right? Or just the son of the element of fire, so. And then of course you would and then basically you can have all the powers of Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four, right? So but you wouldn't be Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four. You would just have all those powers. You could wreath yourself in flame. You could cast fireballs. You could use heat to fly. All of that, right? Okay, so that's pretty cool. And actually, they're not talking about in this game. It's really a supers game that doesn't acknowledge superheroes, right? It's bringing it all from myth, right? So you could be like a mytho. You could be a rift who's manifesting like Paul Bunyan. It just really, really unusual stuff. Anything that's a myth can be a kernel, and from that kernel, you can grow the idea of what your rift actually manifests as. It's quite interesting. Now, these rifts are all like essentially stuck. That's not the right word, but they're placed into a noir detective story, right? They're all like Mike Hammer type noir detectives, right? And so every detective show out there, where you're drinking black coffee and, about to get a divorce from your paramour or from your spouse, that kind of thing. They like that. That's what all the riffs are supposed to be doing, right? And so it's really, there's just nothing like this world. It's so unique, right? So one of the things that's really interesting about riffs that as player characters, I've never seen this before in a game before, but Traveler's really special because people love that you can die, right? Before your character is even created, right? Which is really neat, unique, and fun. Everybody who's ever had it happen, while their character dies before they even get to roll the first die and use that character, it's a cool story to have, right? Well, this game doesn't copy that. It has something really unique, right? Once you have rolled up your character and you move out into the game world, right? And you're actually using it, you can lose your character in two ways. You can lose your character in two ways. You can lose control, of your character, which is really, really fascinating and quite unique, right? Very strange, like just very unusual, right? So how do you lose control of your character, right? So what happens is you can lose your character by going too far into mythos or going too far into logos, right? Your character has to be a balance. It has to be a half god, right? It has to be half human and half god, right? And you have to remain in the balance. If you tip too far in one area, you lose your character to the game master, and your game master, they call the game master an MC, a master of ceremonies in the game. So you can lose your character to the MC if you go too far into the mythos or if you go too far into the logos. So basically, and this is pretty cool. So the way they talk, this game has something really unique, and I need to explain it in order to get to the mythos logos loss parameters. So basically, so your character is this god, this half god, half human, right? Well, what the City of Mist is the city has this unseen mist, right? And so that mist hides the mythic powers that are manifesting from all of the normal people in the City of Mist. So the rifts can see each other, right? They can see each other and see that they're half god, right? But none of the sleepers, and that's what they're called. So the normal people in the City of Mist are called sleepers, right? And if you're a sleeper, you can't see the mist, and you don't know that people around you are half god. You'll never be able to see into that realm, right? So if your character is spending too much time doing their job, too much time washing the dishes, too much time walking the dog, doing things that are just normal, real things, they will slip into the logos. They'll be essentially fall into the logos, and you will lose control of your character by becoming a sleeper, right? So it incents you to use your powers, to embrace your other half as a deity, as a god, a half god, right? So basically, you have this situation where your player character, your rift, is half god, half human, right? And if you go too far, if you're too mundane, you will fall into the logos and you'll become a sleeper. Once you are a sleeper, you no longer have control of your character. Okay? The master of ceremonies, the game master, controls sleepers. Players control player characters, rifts. All right, now what happens if you go too much into mythos? What if you are using your powers, right, your half-god powers, to wash the dishes, right? What if you don't do, you don't do almost anything in a mundane way, and you're constantly using your powers, you only talk to other rifts, and you're, and also you almost never even look into the real world. You're always, viewing things through the filter of the mist, like seeing the really over the top crazy, godlike features of that are on the other side of the mist, right? Well, if you do that too much, you fall into the mythos, right? You fall deeply into the mythos. You're overwhelmed by the mythos, and you become an avatar. Okay, an avatar. And by the way, everybody who is half god, half human, who is not a rift, right? Who's not a player, who's not controlled by a player character, that's an avatar. So, so a half god, half human who's controlled by the master of ceremonies, the game master, is an avatar. So you can become a sleeper, or you can become an avatar, no longer a rift, and lose control of your character. And this is fascinating. I've never really seen that, where they're like, you are on the edge of a knife, man. You could be killed, right? You can lose yourself as an avatar, and you can lose yourself as a sleeper, right? And I think that's really cool. That reminds me of Traveler. That is a true innovation, right? Very, very cool aspect of the game, and I really like it. By the way, the powers that you have, those are called your mythoi, right? And so, so the mythoi are pretty important. The game also has these, it has a lot of cool aspects. Basically, so you have all the things I talked about. Your player characters are essentially, the way you make your player character is you actually are combining it together from three sources: your character theme books, your crew relationships, and your crew theme books, right? And so theme books are used in the game as questionnaires that build your character, right? And so you walk through these theme books and you ask all these questions, and by the time you're done with those, you know what you want to play, right? Now, theme books are interesting. They're a really unique way of playing, of building a character. I actually don't like the way they're doing it in the game. I think I love the concept of theme books. I don't like the execution. And the reason why is City of Mist is heavily bought into. It makes official Session Zero. And I am highly opposed to Session Zeros. I really don't like it, Session Zeros, for a lot of reasons. I think they're a committee to have a tabletop role-playing game, and tabletop role-playing games are so hard to get people to buy in on. The idea of, hey, we're going to play a 4-hour game, for 3 months, and or some people a lot longer than that, and I need you to show up for this 4-hour session where we're just going to do nothing and play and where we're not really going to even be playing. It's just like, oh my gosh, do I have to fill out TPS form 970? Like, I really don't like Session Zeros, and this game is like super heavy on Session Zero. Like, everybody makes their character together, and it's like a whole thing, and I think we do need to connect characters by relationship, right? But this is just, it really handholds people through these things, through every step of character creation, and the idea, and my point is, like, if people are playing a tabletop role-playing game, this is some of the smartest people around, like, the smartest and most creative people around. Like, it's tabletop role-playing games are self-fulfilling filters for smart. Like, you just don't get a lot of non-smart, non-creative people playing tabletop role-playing games, so you don't need to handhold them through this entire process, right? It's just not the way it is. So, I really don't like that they bought in so heavily on Session Zero within this game. The theme books are really interesting, and by the time you're done, you'll have crafted this whole thing. As you actually play the game, you attach tags and statuses to your character, which, again, one of the rules on this game, because they come from PBTA, powered by the Apocalypse, they're just really wonky, and and it's not super clear at all why you need both statuses and why you need tags. It's a lot. It's really piled up complexity and abstraction. It's really, so that's theirs as well. the game, once you get rolling, the game has these 8 core moves. This is straight out of Powered by the Apocalypse. Your 8 core moves are like investigate and hit with all you've got. There's a few others, right? And so essentially within Powered by the Apocalypse, they try to just boil down what you're doing in the game to a core set of moves, right? And then you just roll 2d6 and you add your power, and your power can be combinations of tags that you have and things like that. And then you actually, see, and then and the way Powered by the Apocalypse works is if you have a 6 or less on those 2d6, you fail, right? And if you have a 7 to 9, you essentially have a lesser success. And if you hit 10 to 12, you have a greater success, right? And so that's kind of the way all the Powered by Apocalypse games flow, right? So that's definitely within this game. It also has 4 specific cinematic moves. These are moves that are at the level of the game. They're not really at the level of a specific character, right? And they're used simply to move the story along. In addition to the cinematic moves, the game has this really, really interesting experience mechanic called Moments of Evolution, right? And so one of the things is they have these tags, right? And that is where a lot of the complexity and the abstraction come from. Is you can burn tags or you can replace tags. So you can remove tags from your character and replace them with new tags, right? And to me, that's one of the other things I struggle with. I really struggle with the rules on this. Is it seems like it's hard to just get new tags, right? They want you to get rid of an old tag and replace it with a new tag. And the idea is that the new tag is better than the old, or the game is kind of indifferent and really feels that if you have a different tag, you're advancing that character. The other thing is, I think a lot of times, a lot of these indie games, they look at, leveling up is like, that's so arbitrary. Level 3 and now you're level 4. Who cares? We don't need. And many, many, many independent people who run indie games, indie TRPGs, don't even use experience. They're like, well, you're just more powerful now, or don't worry about that. I'll give you some extra powers. Your level doesn't matter. To me, to players, leveling matters. They want to see progress. They want that progress to be clear on what they're on. They want it to be very clear what the progress is and how and how they're progressing their character, how they're moving their character forward in the story and gaining additional power. Right. So the game has a lot of abstraction around burning tags and replacing tags and adding tags. Right, and which are just really kind of they are descriptors that have mechanical effects, right? But I just really wish that this game had more of a, hey, now you're level 4, right? Like it's the way they handle it is, I feel, it's pretty wonky. So you have all those things that I just described, but you also have these moments of evolution, and moments of evolution are you are now evolving as a character. You are either getting a new power, or you are you're getting a new power, or you're literally transforming into a completely different being, right? And that's interesting. It has some pretty interesting aspects to the game overall. So after all said and done, this is me talking additionally about City of Mist. It truly is a fascinating game, and I'm really curious. Yeah, I really wish they had chosen a different rule system for this. I've been thinking more and more, and I'm wondering if maybe if I cut my player base down to 1 or 2 players, is it possible to play the City of Mist game, or can I just bring my players in, knowing that it's going to be a hard path to get everybody up to speed? But it really has captured my thought patterns, and I'm really thinking a lot, and I'm going back and I'm rereading sections, and it really is. It's a very, very compelling world. There's really nothing like it on the TRPG scene. That's some additional thoughts on City of Mist. Take care.